messages because we just moved it. I got no life. I know. Alright, all set?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, segment 1, 10 minutes. Here we go.
All right, and welcome, folks, to This Week on DNG Radio. I'm your host, Sherman Ram, with the Diversity Networking Group. I just want to welcome you guys all here. It's the day after Christmas, and we are as excited today as we were the day before. For one big reason, we've got Karen Silva. She's from First Choice Pregnancy Services, and she's the executive director. And we're going to talk with her in just a minute, but we're really excited about our guest here today. But I just want to kind of backtrack a little bit and tell you a little bit about who produces this show and the production. And we want to thank Millian Quinteros. And Millian, I'll tell you, for those of you who don't know who Millian is the owner and the CEO, the grand poobah of the City FM. And it's also, for all of you who don't know, here it comes, Millian, you know it's coming. He is in the Hall of Fame, the Hockey Hall of Fame, folks. And so we are excited about that. So if you're ever going to Canton, Ohio, oh, no, that's not where the Hockey Hall of Fame is. Where's it at?
Toronto.
Toronto. Oh, I'm sorry. If you're going to Toronto, you'll be able to see a lifelike bust of Millian there in the foyer, and people all around it that are just bowing down in homage, paying homage to the voice of hockey. That's right, Millian Quinteros. So I just want to thank you for all being a part of the show, and for Millian actually allowing us over here at the City FM to produce this show. And so we're excited about it. For those of you who don't know what the Diversity Networking Group is, and you're just tuning in, I want to welcome you in for the webcam viewers. To my right is Karen Silva, and she is actually part of the Diversity Networking Group, but she's actually a part of the Christian Business Connection. And so it's been, Karen, when you came in the door, we were really excited about it, about you coming into the door and just even being a part of the group, because you really represent a great, a great service here in Las Vegas. For those of you who don't know what First Choice Pregnancy Services is, we're going to allow Karen to tell you a little bit about it. But we want to welcome you, Karen. We want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Gosh, so for those of you who are just tuning in right now, Karen has been a part of Christian Business Connection for how long now?
I think it's been about 3 or 4 months.
Wow. Yeah,
I lose track of time,
yeah.
but it's been such a blessing.
Yeah, time really flies.
It does.
Yeah, when I first heard your story and the things that you do, I thought to myself, my gosh, many of us have businesses that are just really, they're fun businesses, and we do a great service for people, but really what you do is just, to me, it really, it epitomizes what we should all be doing in business. But before we get to all that, I want to talk to everybody just a little bit about you. So, so Karen, you are the executive director of First Choice.
Yes.
But I mean, where did you come from?
Moved here from Boston 4 years ago. Had never wanted to even come to Vegas, and the Lord has a sense of humor. I met my husband there, who had plans to move here, but it's been amazing to see what he's done. I was actually working for a pregnancy center out there, actually an organization that had 6 pregnancy centers in eastern Massachusetts, and had been involved in the pro-life movement for a while, and just really seeing the damage that abortion does.
Oh, sure.
To women and men, and this is obviously a very sensitive issue, and often I find wherever I speak there are people out there who are living in shame and hiding the big secret that they've had abortions or been involved in that decision for a friend, family member, whatever it is. And I just want to say there's hope and healing in Christ.
Amen.
That He died for all sin, and how appropriate to be here today, the day after we celebrate His birth.
I know.
And to know that, there's nothing that Christ can't heal. We just need to bring it to Him.
Yeah, it's funny because you happen to mention, the healing and the hope and everything else. Now, have you forgiven your husband for dragging you out here to Las Vegas?
Well, you know, it was really the Lord, but my friends haven't forgiven my husband.
Oh.
They don't. I keep telling them, you need to talk to the Lord about that, not my husband. But,
Oh, that's fine. So you're married. How long have you been married?
4 years.
4 years.
Yes.
Gosh. Do you mind telling everybody who your husband is?
His name is Jim Silva, and he is a corporate banker and also does ministry work. He goes out on the strip and gives out tracts every Saturday, gospel
Wow.
tracts, and works with the homeless. And we do Bible study in nursing homes together, which it's amazing when God takes you out of your element, how he brings new things into your life, things
Yeah.
that we never thought we would do. So
Sure.
it's great to be
So,
here.
so you figure you're leaving Massachusetts and you're thinking, I'm going out to the armpit of, because many people call Las Vegas Sin City.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that that's true? That you see a major difference between Massachusetts and Las Vegas?
Yes, there's a huge difference, and I think the real difference is here it's advertised.
Oh.
You know what I mean? The first time I came to visit Vegas and I saw the billboards here and just how risque they are. And
There are billboards here?
You're bombarded in the airport when you land and that kind of thing. You
Yeah.
know, sin, as we know, sin happens everywhere.
Sure.
I just think here it's more advertised and accepted,
Mhm.
whereas it's more hidden in other places.
Wow.
But I've also found here, I'm blessed to visit many different churches and just very strong, faithful people in churches here, which has been a delight.
Yeah, because
to
we've
be
got
part
a
of.
ton of churches here.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I mean,
Mhm.
there's one section of town that probably has, 700 churches in a square block. I mean, we really do have a lot of churches here. But one of the things that you were saying was that that we, when we have things that are going on here, they're more out in the open.
Yes.
You think that's a good thing, or you think that's a bad thing, or it's all bad. But
Yes.
I shouldn't say.
Where are we going?
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's because some things are like in the Bible Belt. You've got the Bible Belt where you've
Right.
got a lot of things, and no town is immune to things that are going on.
Exactly.
So up in Massachusetts, though, you just don't see it as prevalent, as you see the things that are going on here in Las Vegas.
Right.
Is it easier to deal with, or is it harder to deal with in that respect?
It's been interesting in Vegas because I feel like because it is out there, people are much more open.
Mm.
They're open to the gospel here.
Uh-huh.
In Massachusetts, not so open.
Really?
Very intellectual. Very career-driven. Most of the people there, that kind of thing. And even going home, a couple weeks ago, just saw that. The people aren't happy. My husband said, people don't look happy walking down the street. And, and I feel like in Vegas, you talk to people about the gospel and even about what we do at First Choice, being a pro-life ministry, and people want to hear about it.
Yeah.
You bring it up in Massachusetts, and they're like,
Really?
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
and that makes a lot of sense though, because even when you look politically and everything else, and I know we're not here to talk about politics, but if you look at politically, you can even see that it's a little different up there in the north, than it is down here.
Right.
And that, like you said, people are more political, or more intellectual up there, and they kind of like say, well, this is kind of you can keep what you want, you just keep it in your house.
Exactly.
As opposed down here, they're a little more open. And you would think that it would be different. You would think down here that people go, oh no, I'm pulling the slot machine,
Right.
and just stay away from me, as opposed to being open here.
Right, and I think my husband always says people here know they're messed up. Whereas in Massachusetts, there's much more of an air of I've got it handled. I'm on track with my career kind of thing. Where people here are much more open about their personal struggles.
Isn't that crazy?
It is.
Well, if you're just tuning in right now, this is This Week on D&G Radio. I'm your host, Sherman Rand with the Diversity Networking Group. In studio today, we've got the Executive Director of First Choice Pregnancy Services, Karen Silva. And we're talking a little bit about who she is, and really just a fascinating conversation about the differences between Massachusetts and Las Vegas right now. And Karen, before we go to break, I really want to talk a little bit. Do you have children? Do you raise children here?
No, my husband and I do not have children. We met in our 40s, and we're a little older.
Mm-hmm.
so now it's just the two of us
Just
serving the Lord.
Well, that's sort of cool, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did. Which means you have a clean house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. There's like a big pause there.
You're right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Because I mean, we just had Christmas over at our place, and we had all the grandkids and everything else. It was crazy, a crazy time. But children, I mean, but it's interesting that you guys met now before you and your husband met. Did you meet him before you got into the work that you're in now, or was it
Yes.
during? Yeah.
It was. I was in this work before, and I had actually been volunteering for a year and a half, waiting to get hired by the organization I was volunteering for. Got hired, and a month later met my husband, and the president of the organization said, "Oh no, she's leaving." You know, so a year and a half later than that, I did end up leaving. But coming here, and how amazing it is that I'm working at First Choice.
Wow.
You know.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, in our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about First Choice and what First Choice is all about. So stick around, folks. This is This Week on DNG Radio. I'm your host, Sherman Ray. In studio today, we have the Executive Director of First Choice Pregnancy Services, Karen Silva. We'll be back in just a moment, folks. Hang on. Hey, and welcome back, folks, to This Week on D&G Radio. I'm your host, Sherman Ray. We were actually just having a Bible study as we were coming back from the break here. In studio today, we have the Executive Director of First Choice Pregnancy Services, Karen Silva. And Karen, in our last segment, we were talking a little bit about you and how you got to Las Vegas and how your friends still haven't forgiven your husband. We won't even mention his name right now for friends who might be listening to this, who are still a little bitter.
Right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about First Choice and First Choice Pregnancy Services. Give us kind of a little background on it. I mean, how long has it been around?
First Choice was opened the end of 2004, very prayerfully, by Olaf Vencura, who's our founder, who invested his prayer, his heart, his money into the ministry. He has such a heart for life, for saving babies and for sharing the gospel. And that's our bottom line mission, is to save babies and share the gospel. And he prayed about a location, and the amazing thing about First Choice is our address is on East Sahara, but we're actually down a little alley. When you turn down that alley, we are on the left, and you go a few hundred yards down, and on the right is an abortion clinic.
Wow.
So we actually have clients who come in to First Choice thinking that they are in the abortion clinic.
Really? So hold up now. So you guys are located down this little alleyway, and your first, and then a couple hundred yards down the road is an abortion clinic.
Abortion clinic, yes.
And so so people actually walk into your door and they say, "Oh gosh, I'm here for an abortion."
Yes.
And then they go, and then you say, "Oh no, there's actually a choice. There's something different." Well, what kind of reactions do you get?
What we do is we pull them in and speak with them privately, and just we're always very clear we don't do that here, because a lot of people that call us too think that we do abortions.
Oh.
So we treat them the same, very clear about what we don't do, and we just say, you know what, have you had an ultrasound yet? Do you really know what abortion is? That kind of thing. You have just a few seconds to reach those people, because they are, they're ready for their appointment, and often women will stay because so often we see women rushing into abortions because they're in shame and or they're being pressured by someone in their life. Their circumstances have become bigger than God, or they don't know God, and so they just, all they can think about is their circumstances. And we are the voice that says, okay, let's just slow down a few minutes. This is a big decision. Yeah,
because literally you've got just a few seconds, and it's just like anything else. I mean, we're generally a business show. So most of the people who listen to the show really know probably what you're talking about, is that it translates, you've got just a couple of seconds before this person will say yes or no to you.
Right.
And you get to say, there is a choice, there's a difference that can be made. So Karen, what are the age groups that you start seeing people come indoors?
We see all ages. We've seen, sadly, as young as 12.
Really?
And
isn't there a law against 12-year-olds? Or is
no,
having?
No, there isn't. They can go have an abortion.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a law against 12-year-olds having sex.
Oh, having sex, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, that's with anyone 16 or older, that's considered statutory rape.
Wow. But you've had 12-year-olds in your place. My gosh, it's gotta.
Yeah, and the scary part is, a lot of the young women we see, they come in with their moms, and their moms know they're having sex.
Yeah.
That's not always the case, but there's just a lot that we see in the family dynamics that isn't working. And many of these young folks that come in, the girls will say, "Oh, my mom really wants me to have an abortion," and over asking her a number of questions, we'll find out that her mom has had an abortion.
Oh,
so Million was on the break was talking about attacking generations.
Sure.
And so we do believe that Satan, we know he comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and he is attacking generations.
Sure.
And so when a woman has an abortion and doesn't deal with it, there's something psychologically that she'll support someone else, including her own daughter, to do the same thing, that justifies it in her mind.
Yeah, so it's a perpetual thing that just keeps going generation after generation.
And it sounds right. I mean, that's how scary the lies of Satan are. It sounds right to say, well, my daughter's 12 or 13 or 15, this is going to ruin her life.
Sure.
And what people don't know is that abortion will ruin their life a lot more
Yeah, sure.
than, having a child that God has created.
Yeah.
There's so many people out there wanting children that can't have them, and there are so many people out there, women that are pregnant, that don't want the child, and there's such a disconnect between the two.
Sure, and a lot of times it's because people just don't know. I mean, there's definitely some emotional things that are going on in their lives, and some spiritual things that are going on in their lives.
Exactly.
But a lot of times they have abortion because they're just at the end of the rope. They have no idea that there is another choice out there for them to take.
Right. And often, again, like I said, the circumstances have become so big, and at First Choice we really, we share the gospel. We early on in their, session with us, we ask them, what's your religious background? Do you go to church? What church do you go to? And so that opens up our opportunity to share Jesus with them. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. This happens.
Yeah,
get to be my age.
But you give them a choice.
But we talk to them exactly about, first of all, God's plans, and ask them, we ask a lot of questions because self-revelation is more powerful than us telling them.
Sure.
And we ask them, do you know what your 3 options are if you're pregnant? It's to parent, to place for adoption, or to abort.
Yeah.
And we say placing for adoption, not giving up.
Sure.
There's a lot of power in terminology that you use, and a lot of people don't know that with adoption they choose the birth parents. There's a lot of financial help and support throughout the adoption process. They can choose whether they see the child or not. There are so many different aspects of the choice that we educate on.
Sure. And that's probably, I think that's like so important that you actually educate people, because like we were just talking about before, people don't know that there's actually a choice, that you can actually, in this day and age, in this modern day and age, that choosing an adoption or choosing an abortion is probably just got to be the silliest thing to do, because there are so many people who need babies, who want babies. We were talking about this in the break. Excuse me. The number of abortions that there have happened since the advent of this open market on abortion. And Karen, how many abortions do you recollect there have been since, let's say, 60? I guess it was about 63, 64 when Roe v. Wade happened. So
there's the last number I heard was more than 53 million abortions, and you think about if you've got 53 million people together, just how crazy that is. And abortion, I've personally had abortions, and that's why I'm so passionate about this work, because when I was 17, scared of my parents, didn't know God, it seemed like the best thing. It was easy.
Sure.
Sadly, it was easy. And I think about, wow, part of the reason I don't have children now is because of that decision to have an abortion.
Sure.
And so I think about, not only has it affected whoever my children would be, but also who their children would be.
That's true.
It goes down to generations. And there's just so much to think about with abortions. And one of the, First Choice, all of our services are free, so we do a free pregnancy test and consultation, and we also do ultrasound, because when women see their ultrasound, often they're like, oh, it's a baby, and before then it was just an issue.
Yes. Yeah, it was just an issue, an inconvenience, which oftentimes, I guess we look at it just, bluntly, it's a lot of times like, oh, it's an inconvenience, I will not partying, or whatever, and now all of a sudden, this is going to mess up my life.
Right.
So it's inconvenient for me. But you, Karen, you said something interesting, excuse me, that you speak from experience, that this isn't just a momentary thing, this is something that could literally affect you the rest of your life.
Right.
And so by people speaking to you, they're not just speaking to some guy who's saying, hey, don't do this, or yes, do this.
Right.
They're talking to somebody who actually has experience that's going through this themselves.
Exactly, and it does affect people the rest of their lives. Come Mother's Day, it's hard. People say, well, God forgives, and God heals, and God restores, and there's a whole separate conversation about intentional sin.
Sure, sure.
But, I'm like, you know what, I praise God, He has healed me, restored me, but that grief doesn't go away. All those what ifs,
So we're not even just talking about 53 million babies. We're talking about 53 million adult women who years ago, or even last week, had an abortion, who are probably going to be suffering through this for the next umpteen years.
Right.
Yeah. So, wow, it's interesting. For those of you who are just tuning in right now, this is This Week on D&G Radio. I'm your host, Sherman Ray, the founder and the president of the Diversity Networking Group. We're talking with the executive director of First Choice Pregnancy Services, Karen Silva, and just a great conversation here talking about the ministry and the work that she's in right now. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about First Choice and more about you, Karen. I think people are really going to be intrigued more as they get into this a little bit more. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Hey folks, and welcome back to This Week on D&G Radio. I'm your host, Sherman Ray. I'm the founder and the president of the Diversity Networking Group. If you're ever in Las Vegas, folks, I really encourage you to come on down to the Diversity Networking Group. We actually have two groups that meet throughout the week. One meets on a Wednesday, and that's the Christian Business Connection. And the other one meets on Thursday over at Panera Bread, which is the Diversity Networking Group. And I want to just make an announcement, folks, that for a lot of you who don't know about this, we've been, as a networking group, we've been just so blessed that we've had a lot of interest in the group. But one of the things, one of the people that's been really interested in us is the Lakeside Business Suites. And Lakeside has basically, they are our newest affiliate member. And what we're doing is we're actually building a super networking group with them. And so I'm the director over that now. We've called it the Las Vegas Business Promotion Network. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as the weeks go by, but we'll make a major announcement on it in January and how that's going to affect Las Vegas business, because really that's what a lot of this is all about. It's about whatever affects Las Vegas. And in studio today, we actually have somebody who has actually been has a major effect on Las Vegas. And that's the Executive Director of the First Choice Pregnancy Services, Karen Silva. And Karen, in our last 2 segments, we've been talking a little bit about abortion and the services that First Choice provides. So what's the outlook? I mean, let's forecast what's going to happen in 2013 for First Choice. So what kind of things do you guys have planned?
Well, we need to expand. There are only 2 pro-life pregnancy centers in Las Vegas, and 2 for yeah,
there's like 3 million people here in the valley.
Exactly, and so we really need to expand. We cannot keep up with our client volume. We miss calls every day, and we know that when people don't get us, they're going to that next phone number, which is most likely an abortion clinic. We send clients away sometimes because just for lack of funding, we need more staff, we need more volunteers, and that's a common cry of nonprofits. But I just, we're dealing with life and death, literally. And I think about those women who have an appointment for an abortion that day and come into our clinic, like they had an appointment for death that day, and God intervened and brought them in. And so we know we need to expand. We've known that for a while, but God has shown me that He will expand First Choice in 2013.
Well, definitely, because with 3 million people, and with the way the mentality of people is now, they want things now.
Exactly.
And when somebody's faced with the choice of, gosh, I can have a baby or I can't have a baby, and literally they have weeks to go. I mean, it's not like they have to make the choice right now.
Exactly.
But mentally and emotionally, they're at that point where they're saying, this is going to be good.
Yeah, they want it done. They want it over with. They think they're going to move on. And I also want to share, along with the free pregnancy test and ultrasound, we also offer post-abortion counseling and refer to a retreat for post-abortion healing.
So what do you mean by that?
If a woman or a man has had an abortion or been involved in an abortion, we long to point them to Christ and hope and healing, because the statistics of the damage that people who have had abortions do in their relationships is huge, not just to themselves but to others, because of the shame just comes out in anger, low self-worth, drug abuse, depression. Like the statistics are astounding. And so we long for people to receive healing, because also for any trauma, if someone doesn't get healed, they repeat that trauma. Like people will say, if abortion is so horrible, why do people go on to have other, like myself? And that's just, as I said, that trauma gets stuck in your psyche, your brain, your heart, that sin, and it just goes on. Yeah,
and we were talking about that in the last segment too, about, by our last count that we know of, 53 million children who have been aborted. But we alluded to that there's 53 million women who have gone through this, and also 53 million men.
Exactly.
And if they don't get, now the children, they're in glory now, so there's really nothing we can do about that.
Right.
But the husbands and the wives, or the men and the women who are involved in this, if they don't get some kind of counseling, will tend to do what?
To be very self-destructive
Yeah.
in many different ways, and also not be able to have successful relationships because of the low self-worth, the shame, like I said, and also have a hard time bonding with children.
Okay.
You know, often people with abortions get pregnant within a year again, and it's like a replacement child. And you know, people go on, have abortions, then go on to have children, but then have a hard time bonding with them, get angry with them, you know, just because of all that turmoil in their hearts from their past that they haven't dealt with.
Yeah. So if they don't get healing in this, and they don't have some hope in the end of this, there's so many things. And then you were saying also, I believe you were saying that they will tend to go back and do it again,
Yes.
and have another abortion.
Yes, yes. The last statistic I heard was that 47% of women who have had abortions go on to have multiple abortions.
That's crazy. You would think that people, it's almost like a drug addict who
Exactly.
says, you know what, the door was opened up and I had my first real experience with this, and now I'm going to do it again. Even though I felt the effects and they were terrible, but now there's something that happened, so I'm going to do it again anyways.
Yeah.
So it's and so it seems like not only is there a real need for somebody who gives them a choice and a hope that there's a different way to handle this abortion, and you know, and that's the services that you have, and adoption, you know, an adoptive replacement. But if you've already had the abortion, you need to come in and see a counselor, because if
Yes.
not, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to go on in your life that you're probably not thinking have been solved because you had an abortion.
Exactly. Exactly.
Because abortion seems to me is not as a solution. It seems to me as a beginning of some real bad things.
And when after I became a Christian, I couldn't stop crying, and I didn't know what it was, and later came to realize it was because of the abortions. And you know, often even well-meaning Christians will say, "Well, that's in your past, and God has forgiven." But you know what? If you don't get the healing and that you need, and work through, you know, the process of the emotions and what led you there, and get to the core of what led you there. Our Pam Kaler, who used to be the director of First Choice, you know, always says the decision.
Oh, I know Pam.
You know Pam.
I do.
She's lovely.
Yeah, sure.
She always says the decision to have an abortion didn't start with the abortion. It started years ago, and you know, so there's just a lot to work through in that pain, and again, if it's not done, that just the damage, you know. And again, I see so many moms, you know, wanting their daughters to have an abortion.
Sure.
And that's where that comes from. And also, you know, we are there to educate, and you know, a lot of people don't know. Do you know when a baby's heart starts beating?
No. Is it
It's 21 days.
21 days?
21 days.
So 3 weeks.
3 weeks, and most people don't know that. Many women come in and they'll say, "Well, I'll have an abortion if I'm not too far along," and I'll say, "Well, what do you consider as too far along?" And you know, I'll say, "Did you know the heart starts beating at 3 weeks?" And they're like,
Oh
"No."
my gosh.
So there's just so much that we
So much.
share that people aren't thinking about, and I always pray for a ripple effect, not just to affect the client and whoever they bring into our center, that they're affected, but the effect that we have on them ripples out to all the others in their lives, and that you know, wherever I go talk about what we do, that we just educate people.
Sure, you educate them. So what kind of places do you speak at? I mean, you speak at, of course, probably churches.
I speak at churches. I'll speak anywhere that people want me to, and we have others chomping at the bit to share about First Choice. I speak a lot at youth groups. That's my passion, to reach the youth before they come into our centers, before they even think about making those decisions.
That's a really good place, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so we were talking briefly, and we don't have a lot of time, but schools, how receptive are schools?
They're not very receptive. I have spoken at 2 different school events, and some were very open to what we do, and some were very angry about what we do, and gave me a hard time because we don't refer for abortion.
Wow.
And I said, you know what? People can die having abortions.
Yeah.
They're going to be damaged the rest of their life in some way, and so in good conscience we can't do that. But there was a lot of anger directed at me and what we do.
That's very, and we were talking about this before. It just seems very strange to me that schools would just be kind of, and they're trying to they're educators. You'd think they would be, they want to educate people with condoms, but they don't want to educate people by saying, hey, guess what, there is a choice if this should happen, that there is hope and there's healing out there for you.
Exactly, and I think about pro-choice versus pro-life. In the pro-life arena, we educate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, not every pro-life person does. Some, you know, we know that some people don't educate. They have a strong conviction in not a good way. But in, you know, what we do at First Choice is we educate on all their options. When a woman goes to a nurse at school or, you know, ends up in an abortion clinic, the abortion clinics don't educate.
No.
They don't even tell them it's surgery
No,
to have an abortion.
They probably just get a check. That's amazing. Karen, and there's so much more to talk about this because it's just a great subject, and I think it's so timely, and it's really an important subject. If people want to get a hold of you over at First Choice Pregnancy Services, how would they get a hold of you?
Okay, our phone number is 702-294-2273.
Okay, give it to them one more time.
702-294-2273.
Okay, and do you have a website?
We have two websites. We have one that's for our clients, and that's called firstchoicelv.org.
Okay.
And then we also have a website for our donors and supporters and prayer partners, which is firstchoicefriendslv.org.
So firstchoicelv.org or firstchoicefriends.org?
LV.org, yes.
Okay, great. Well, Karen, I really appreciate you coming on the show today and just educating us a little bit more on what you do over at First Choice. We'd like to invite you back to talk a little bit more, because I think it's just something that touches my heart, and I think a lot of people who are listening today are probably feeling the same way. Okay?
Well, it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you. Hey, so folks, this has been This Week on D&G Radio. In studio today, we've had services. We'll be back again next week, folks, and look, it's next week like next year. Oh, is it? Well, 2013. We won't back the rest of the year. 2013, we'll be back with This Week on D&G Radio at your same bat time, same bat channel. That's on at 10:30 over here at the City FM. Or if you're watching us on the video cam, we're on Ustream.tv. We'll see you again, folks, next week on Wednesday. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.